It's kind of reassuring. If you look at it through the right lens, so I was usually, the best case scenario, like what's the best type of brain tumor that I could possibly have? And then obviously really hoping that it was that, which unfortunately it wasn't. But that kind of held me together and looking through the next couple of weeks, which is kind of holding my breath, um, to then actually have next steps with the health system and figure out what can be done. Yeah, which, and it's interesting. The study that I'm doing or that I'm interested in is different families that have social sustainability and economic sustainability. With the president,
Right, welcome back. We'll resume. Okay, who was in the Scott? You were in the middle of something, were you not?
He was, and we'll just finish this off, and then just to clip back into that short break, we might take a more speedy step through a couple more slides, and then have a chat with you. So I'll just pass back to Scott.
So I'll be quick. I hope that little exercise there emphasised my point that these events can happen at any time. I guess the only thing I'll just wrap up with is that considering the scale of some of these potential risks, the complexities of them, the fact that they're beyond the capacity of any single one council or organisation to manage, the only way that we can do this effectively in terms of good coordination, collaboration and making the most of opportunities in terms of support mechanisms available to councils, such as external funding and resources, we need to do pre-planning and preparing our community, our council and our community, so that we have a strong recovery structure in place so that we can get through these events successfully. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan and Scott. And that's a really great segue into, I was just talking to the chair, we're going to lean a little bit into, so what is recovery and what does it involve and where will we be heading? So I am just going to swing through a couple of slides and then we might pause, and if there's any questions we can lean into those if that's all right. So only just to say, you would have seen before the 4 Rs. Recovery is one of those, and one of the things we wanted to emphasise is recovery doesn't start after response. Recovery starts actually right at the point of reduction. So we are going to get into what does that mean now. Just to link back to though, there's legislation around recovery. So in response, there's a controller and they get special powers. Through recovery, those powers are transitioned through for a period, and then there are no powers. And so the way in which you have to operate and work, as we do right now with our community,
that has gone into your battery by the sounds of it.
Can I borrow that one? Sorry. Thank you. As working with the community and through the community, just to know you've met the team, and we are working with Remo. Hi, team. So, recovery. Dan and Scott have dipped into this a weeny bit, but essentially what we wanted to emphasise to you a little is this is not actually about council. This is about community, and council has a role in working with the community and business and all other stakeholders. We did have a continuum that would popped up which was about recovery, and what I just wanted to say is it goes through phases, and we'll dip into some practical items of what it looks like because it changes over time. I do just really want to emphasise a special thing about recovery is there's 2 things. One is that you really need to be able to factor in the impact to people's lives in an ongoing context. The second is that through the process, innovation and different options to how we might, I'm going to call it build back, not build the same, but build back, really come into play. And so there's an opportunity to think about new ways of doing things as you go through a recovery process. We have just pointed out to you, I'm going to call it the cycle of, well, it is a cycle of doom. I was going to say grief, but you go through a grieving process through recovery, and this is evidenced. So the start of it in the honeymoon phase is response, where everyone's like, yeah, cool stuff is happening, and then you pause and you do deep dive because things are not what they've been, and so getting back into a normal way of living takes time. And there's high impact. And Scott's comments about the expectations from communities during recovery are extremely high. And so there's a link between the service you provide in response and what is expected in recovery. And often we've seen in experiences in Canterbury and Cyclone Gabrielle that when that drops, the community really activates because there are strong expectations of council's role actually and your role as elected members. We were going to dip into a bit around lessons learnt, but because of our blip in time, I just wanted to say we have been engaged and working with a bunch of people. I'm not going to call them experts because they don't call themselves experts, but they've been involved for years in recovery internationally in New Zealand, and they've shared with us some of the things that they think you could work on before an event to make it more effective and to support communities better. So what I'm going to say is the things that came to the forefront were things like the permissioning environment, setting up governance in advance so people know where decisions are made, actually having things like a trust where you can receive philanthropic international funds. So if you don't have it, you don't get it. The big money comes from overseas. It won't come from this country. And so there's some small things or quick wins we can be putting in place now to be better positioned for our community. The other one I'll hover on is it's community-led recovery, not council-led recovery, and it's a really important point. Lastly, I just want to say that we've had a lot of feedback from Cyclone Gabrielle, and one of the things that was a primary, I'll say, challenge was lack of resource in terms of people in recovery. So everybody swung into response and burnt out essentially, and in some places they had one person doing recovery work, and those people were also burnt out, and it was really, I think the relationships between central and local government had not been significantly or sufficiently put in place to enable effective, ways of working will be the way I frame it. So I just want to read this quote because I think it's important. Bureaucrats talked about community engagement, but decisions were foregone conclusions and consultation tokenistic. It felt like being offered the option of having a lobotomy or moving to another country, which to choose. And I think it's good just to understand how it feels from the other side. And I want to give you a practical example of what that means. In Cyclone Gabrielle, councils were asked to develop a budget for recovery in 3 weeks. That was 3 weeks you had to put in your best bet of what you needed. And that was in the middle of coming out the back of response and having no idea what we needed to do. And so that's the kind of challenge you face. There was no opportunity to engage the community about what was needed. There's 3 weeks is not long enough to do that. So just a small insight to why you would try and do some things in advance. I also wanted to just say, this is the practical stuff about recovery. So what does it look like? What's involved? We know there's some known needs. So things like housing, power, communication, welfare support, business continuity, access to food and water, roading and transport routes continues. Psychological support is a massive one, which is understated. So the impact to you and your life and how things are changing might be a loss of family. There's a whole range of things that happen and that community connection. So you'll see in here that we've noted the challenge and some practical short-term actions that we'd be starting to look at. You'll see in there's things like MOU, which is basically saying we've got an arrangement with other parties for how we'll do things together. That might sound like a small thing, but it appears that that is one of the most massive barriers to making stuff happen, is not having agreement on what you're going to do. Also, not knowing each other. So knowing who you're going to work with, having arrangements set in place, and even being able to say, hey, if we need to put some temporary housing in, this is probably where we might go. So that's the kind of things we're talking about in a really practical sense.
Can I just say that I think that's a very important slide, that one. If you look at it, access to this, access to that, access to cash is a very important thing.
Yep.
And you just think about what players have to be involved to provide that access. It really shows that it's a huge number of organisations have got to work together to provide that total accessibility that you've got on that slide. So I think that's a very good slide. And also I think it's even better reinforced by slide 20, which goes into more detail. But I mean, it just makes us think about, practically what it is that has to be done to provide people to get access to these things, right?
Just what do I do? Touch it like that? That's a really, really important point of the importance of planning this pre-event. When we supported the Wide App and their recovery, right out of the gate, we were really leaning into how do we get money, because we knew government kind of stands up and goes like, we just want to give away money for this recovery. And we helped get the Wide Rapid right in the front of the line, right at the front of the queue on a number of projects, and that really enabled them to get a big pile of cash that is still benefiting those councils today. So by being able to do this pre-event, you're able to kind of really position yourself to jump right to the front of the queue when government goes, okay, there's money available, we're making money available, we want to hand it out. While other councils might be scrambling, we're hoping to help position the Wellington region, but particularly in Kapiti in this instance, to be right at the front of the queue.
But people also should need cash in their hands. And that's why ATMs don't work, for example, right? So keep a reserve of cash in your home as part of a plan, which most people don't, I'm sure, but could do.
Yeah.
Okay, that's right.
I was going to say, but that was actually, that came out of Bay of Plenty. So Julian, who was up on the picture before, he came up with a cash is king statement, because in Cyclone Gabriel, people had no money, they couldn't get it, and you can't buy stuff with no cash, because you're right, ATMs didn't work. There was no pay wave. And so it's really practical stuff that you can be supporting people with in a longer term.
Petrol pumps don't work.
Yeah, absolutely. Petrol doesn't work. There's a whole range of practical things. The other thing I just might note, though, is sometimes in recovery, there's an expectation that everyone is impacted. Unfortunately, that's not true. Sometimes you have half of your district not impacted and half of your district impacted. And so there's also a piece in here about expectations for my life is not impacted, therefore I want my normal service. And then you're also dealing with people who absolutely, they've got nowhere to live and you'll have to scramble around. So some of what we'll be looking at is those different scenarios that may play out and how we, as a council with our community, are managing through that together. I have a page on what's already underway. I think what I want you to take away is we've been putting a bunch of foundational things in place. And
It's yellow. Sorry, Chris, while you're waiting for that, what are the lead NGOs? You're saying you're working with lead NGOs. What are some of the NGOs?
Sorry, so we're talking about internationals. So we're talking about Red Cross. We've talked to Red Cross. We've got Elizabeth, who've noted in here, who I'm going to say she's an expert, even though she doesn't claim that. We've actually had Benicia Smith, who did the review of Canterbury earthquake, a number of other inquiries. So what we're trying to learn from is people who have been in the thick of things in a number of different contexts. So not small but large. So that's what we meant. What I want you to take away from is there's a lot of work underway already. We're putting the foundations in place, and we're now at a position where we're starting to want to get into our recovery program, which is what we want to share with you. Before we do, though, I just want to say one of the important things we will have to agree and put in place with you is proposed principles that shape our recovery program. We've just put some up today, which are from what we've heard from the recovery managers and those experts from other events, that were things that we think we'd be coming back to talk to you about. So I won't go into that in detail, but you can see some quite fundamental things in there about the last one being balancing health and safety risks, consider the risk of doing or not doing and the impact for the community. So an example of that is from Cyclone Gabriel, farmers who were rurally based couldn't get access in and out of their roadways, and it wasn't a priority for council. And so councils up there said, no, you can't, get your tractors out and get the stuff off the road. And then they realised how impractical that was. And so one of the things they suggested is you should be able to put some of those conditions in place so you know how you're going to operate in the event of an emergency. Where is it okay for people to do things? Where would you be saying, no, we're going to be doing stuff? So eventually we'd be getting into those spaces, but I think that's a really great example of the need to be practical, the need to balance risk, and so those would be some of the things that we're talking about. This is really the last one, and I won't go into huge detail, but wanted to say to you, we are working with Remo. We're actually a pilot for a new recovery approach, which I know you guys are excited, but we're excited too. So we're going to be the first in this region to do this. And effectively, we are going to be putting a program in place so that we are ready to go. 4 areas of focus. One is council and community, one is our systems, one is our partnerships, one's the last one's plans and procedures. And essentially, as we go through these steps and work, we've prioritised the actions that we think are most critical to have in place, just in case something does happen. And the reality is that, I'll say this politely, in other emergencies, people have been winging it. So if something happens, we will just have to do stuff. What we're trying to do is get ahead of the game and put some things in that will give us an advantage so that if we need to do something, or when we need to do something, we are as ready to go as we can be. And our community already feels involved in that. So I might pause there.
Thank you very much, Chris and the Remo team. Let's throw it open for the questions or discussion. Glenn, you seem to be first. No, Liz, sorry.
Yeah, it's me.
Liz is first. Sorry. Liz, then Lawrence.
Yep. Look, there's another R word that I've only heard mentioned once, and that was in Dan's job title, I think. And that's resilience. We're talking a lot here about community-led things. Community resilience has to be part of this mix somewhere. It doesn't appear on any of the information we have in front of us. Is that this is like the second part, as we heard? The first part was response recovery. Is there another part that talks about resilience? Where does resilience fit into this whole picture? Because it seems to me that will solve a lot of the problems. Things about having cash on hand, having access to petrol, knowing who your neighbours are, knowing what equipment your neighbours have got to help dig you out of a hole or whatever.
I can share some thoughts on that. So my team is actually split in half, so I'm really lucky to have Scott in the recovery space dedicated to this type of work. I've also got a whole team that works in communities across the region. So many of you probably know Renee Cortlett.
Yeah.
Renee is working in the community resilience space, and in that sense, it is community resilience for disasters. Your council is doing all kinds of other great work day to day that builds strong communities. That also is about resilience from a strong community's point of view. But the targeted stuff around preparedness for disasters, both from a community angle of response and recovery, Renee and other members of my team support the Kapiti Coast in that sense.
Yeah, Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I was just going to say, I think I'll add to that and say, I think resilience, if I thought about it, is across all of this.
Absolutely.
Because by doing planning, you're building resilience. By doing reduction, you're building resilience. The only time you aren't building resilience is in response, because you're having to, reactively respond to something that happens.
Well, I think resilience applies in response as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
But I mean,
So,
you
but
can't stop it
I'm
happening.
just querying why the word isn't mentioned in your framework, the word resilience.
It's,
Yeah.
it's, as Chris pointed out, it's almost like an umbrella term, resilience, for the 4 Rs. So,
Right.
so the reduction activities, the conversations you were just having about strengthening your water networks, that's all tied to resilience, right? Because when you have those strong water
Right, right,
networks,
right.
they're less likely to fail. That has that has positive consequences for the community to be able to continue operating. All that's tied into the resilience that your council is doing every day. And the reason I'm bringing up Renee is from that community point of view, she's doing that targeted
Yeah,
work
yeah.
in the
Yeah. Okay.
I might just add, this is not our framework, so this is a national framework. So the 4 Rs framework is nationally set. When you read it, it has the words resilience embedded.
Lawrence, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question. We've got community-led, not council-led. I think that needs to be unpacked a lot, because at the moment what I see is there's a lot of funding available for council to do a lot of work, but no funding available for community to do any work in this space. So to be community-led, there's got to be some resourcing of that, because you're going to be asking for community organisations, groups in our community to be engaged with this early, to become part of the planning for recovery if it's to be community-led. Otherwise, it is council-led. And so I think we've got to be really careful around that phrase, the way we use that language, because there has to be some expectations that come with that, and some commitment to resource community if they're going to lead in this space. So
I think what we'll do is write that down and come back to you. I think as we work through and come back on the program of work, it's going to be, I think that will become more apparent what is involved. I think the comment about community-led is when you stand up recovery, I think the point that was being put across is it's not council doing something to the community, it's about the community being involved in that conversation. But take your point about the fact that for others to be involved, actually there's a bigger point there. So we'll come back to you on that. Thank you, Lawrence.
Let me just say what fantastic work you guys do and how important it is. So thank you for that. And in terms of KCDC's emergency management team in general, they're absolutely fantastic. I've worked with them in an external capacity, and they're nothing but professional and driven and passionate. So that's awesome. I had a question in relation to the work program or workflow. So we see in other areas of our reporting that we have some coastal resilience issues in terms of infrastructure and frailties, I guess, weak points. So is it envisaged that the recovery work will drive a work schedule around this recovery work will actually will direct reduction and readiness work? Or is the recovery work that's being done just simply responsive to the reduction and readiness work? So it won't,
I think I'm
it won't
going to
drive a work program.
I'm going to carefully say there's an acknowledgement of the links between that and recovery. I think what we are coming to this table with is we want to stand up the recovery function in the context that we have all the things we need in place to activate when we need to. So the MOUs are in place with whoever they need to be with, that we've got a trust we've stood up to take philanthropic funding. We're not going to try and problem solve the world through the recovery program. There will be other things that are underway that will make sure there's a linkage and we can share the impact for recovery and perhaps the priority or benefit that might come from focusing on it. Absolutely. So we'll do those linkages, but this was specifically about the foundational things we need in place, just like the EOC. we're basically going to have an equivalent for recovery. That's what we're talking about. Do you have any
Yep,
further
that-
point? No? Yeah?
Yeah, sort of answers my question.
And then I think as you know, if you were to stage it, that's a critical first bit, right? How do you stand up a coordination for recovery? And maybe over time, there's elements where if you were to start to work backwards and go, what's going to inform a good recovery? Maybe that's where that piece of work starts to tie in.
Yeah, I'm just thinking we're immediately having a
Yeah,
conversation
you got
about coastal adaptation. And so I think what I can say in the short term, our immediate focus is actually just getting ourselves sorted so we're ready to go. Of course, we need to have some other conversations, but we haven't embedded that into the work program you've got on this first page.
I guess my point was, and I'm sure that you are, is that if recovery works in isolation, in a silo, it actually needs to work in really closely with those other two. And I'm
Agreed.
sure it is.
And I agree with both ends, right? It's you got to stand. There's so much work in the first instance just to be able to transition, establish a coordination effort, and then I think that's where your
Yeah.
conversation goes.
Yeah, but what, I'm going to take your point, Glenn, though, because I think in the reduction zone, we talk about district plan. And we talk about actually seawall management, for example. We can definitely link those things back to how it's fitting into this wider program, the 4Rs, and how it's helping us. And I think we already do. I'm looking at NINCA and our risk work. And so I think that kind of brings that together. But when we come up with advice, we can definitely be making sure we highlight that.
Great. And just to comment to the resilience discussion is, the resilience is the outcome of the work done in the 4Rs, I think is a really good way of explaining it. It's the resilience is the outcome. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, well, look, I'll draw this, sorry.
I know it's last minute, but I'm just looking at the agenda and how this is an update rather than a report. And the unfortunate thing about that is that we don't have a separate section with climate change implications and engagement. And as we move forward, I'd like a little bit more how this is embedded into our climate change resilience work, and also some kind of engagement plan about how we're going to inform the community of this piece of work, because it's a really positive piece of work that we're doing, and we'd like to share that we're, you know, the cutting edge of this. And also it's really important that the community are taken along with the journey. And yeah, just because it's an update, we haven't put that filter through in the report. So to speak.
That's a fair point. I think today we were trying to open a conversation about recovery because we haven't put it on the table, so we are. Absolutely has a link to our climate strategy, actually. So recovery is one of the elements in our climate strategy. And when we come back and for example, talk about partnerships, we'll be starting to unpack how we're doing some of those things. So I guess I'm going to say devil's in the detail. Absolutely take your point. We'll make sure we bring that back and you can see how that's fitting in.
Well, Chris, Dan and Scott, thank you very much for this presentation. We can study at our leisure. Obviously, we can talk at length about response versus recovery. They are obviously linked. Just be clear for me that REMO covers response and recovery. So, and they are both under the same piece of legislation, in fact, all right? So that's a point worth noting. But we'd like to see you come back. Now, we did have a presentation on response at our February meeting, I think, and they're coming back again. They said they'd be happy to come and talk to us again, but not all the time. And so we've scheduled them for our November meeting, and I think it would be appropriate to reschedule you to come back and see us at our first meeting in the new year, which is March, all right? And give us an update in March, so we can just keep the thing going and keep up to date, all right? All right.
Can I? Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Jocelyn.
Thank you, through the chair. So I just wanted to follow on what Amir says and what Chris has said. So next Tuesday, we have our CES subcommittee, and we're going to be having a bit of a conversation about our think tank. And on that think tank, we have Renee in terms of her resilience work. And I think listening to the conversation, and thank you very much for all the people involved in here, I think the pre-planning part of this is really, really important. And it's so we have a lot of developing operational systems, but it's actually what is also being put in place on the ground in those communities, so that people have got something that can help done initially, but also planning in place that actually helps build that community-led initiatives.
Yes, and and maybe I can leave a final note that whilst we've come to this committee, in developing our work, we'll be coming through our other committees and actually unpacking it. So the focus on community, the reason we've lent in that so much today is a lot of what we'll be talking about to you about is how we're doing that and how we use some of the existing forums, leaders, a whole range of things in our community to keep this going. So absolutely agree with you, Jocelyn, and we will be making sure we come back to emphasise how we do those things.
Everybody, well, look, I will now move that the Risk and Assurance Committee, I'm not going to read it all out, page 6, notes the vulnerability, notes the focus of the recovery program, and notes that you'll come back to us in the new year, all right? So I move the recommendation as set out on page 6, and all those in favour will please say aye. Seconded by Councillor Kirby, the Deputy Mayor. In favour say aye or contrary no. The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, Chris, Scott, and Dan. Okay. And thank you to our KCDC staff who were sitting up the back. Thank you very much. Okay. Look forward to seeing you again. Okay. We now move to so much paper. Hang on. Let me just find my place. Okay, we're now dealing with the audit closing report for the 24-34 long-term plan. Do we have Ahmed online for that or what?
We have Cheryl online for that.
Cheryl's online. Where's Cheryl? Is she online?
There's Ahmed.
Oh, and Ahmed's there too. All right. Okay. So Cheryl's online and Ahmed's. Welcome, Ahmed, and hello, Cheryl. Okay. All right. Would you like to introduce this, Ahmed or Cheryl? Who should be first? Cheryl?
Sure, I can talk to it, Chair. Good morning, and thank you for inviting us this morning to talk to our audit close report. And we take the report as read, and I just want to highlight a few things in the document, but also across the long-term plan. So our audit's been concluded end of June, and we issued unqualified audit report on the long-term plan. And I want to highlight that, and this is unique to Kapiti in the essence that you were able to complete the long-term plan, but also get an unqualified audit report at the same time, because I think across the sector, this long-term plan has been quite challenging, and with respect to late policy changes with the Three Waters and cost of living crisis and challenges that councils need to work through, and as well as the affordability in terms of and rates and investment in infrastructure. So I think credit goes to the council team who worked quite hard to in a short period of time to work through those challenges. And so I think that's kind of a positive aspect of it. And in terms of the actual paper in the back, and it really highlights where we focused on during the audit, and mostly around the infrastructure assets and their conditions and the performance, because those then feed into the long-term plan forecasting. So we spent quite a bit of time looking through that. The other area we spend a bit of time is around the key assumptions that underpin the long-term plan, particularly the council's ability to do the capital program, the NZTA funding, and for roading, and other key assumptions. We've also looked at and challenged the team around rates affordability and the balance in terms of affordable rates and the ability to pay down debt. And that's kind of an area we also focused on throughout the audit. Obviously, I think given the success of the project, there are also improvement areas in a such project that's quite involved. And I think those improvement areas will be presented to the council, or to this committee, sorry, in the November meeting. And we've been talking to management in terms of how do we learn from this process and on go forward basis. So then when the next LTP comes around, we are in a much better position to be able to deal with any of those challenges. So that's all I wanted to cover this morning, but happy to take questions and the committee may have.
Thank you, Ahmed. Cheryl, do you want to add anything at all, Cheryl? Okay. Look, Ahmed, just a couple of points from me before I throw it open. Look, there's some really valuable information in this report, particularly related to infrastructure. You've given us a comment there on the asset conditions by asset group on page 36, which is quite revealing. We rank poor under coastal assets and satisfactory only under access and transport, but all the others, particularly the water ones are good. That's reassuring. But so the information on the asset condition is very good, very useful. The achievability of the works program, you make a comment on page 37 that there have, despite improvements, the council continues to underdeliver on its capital works target due to technical and other reasons for this delay. You might like to elaborate on that, or people might want to raise questions on that. And the final point on the same page, on the right-hand side, Ahmed, you said, as part of your procedures, you assess the doability of the capital works program, which is a very important thing as well. But I can't see, maybe I've missed it, I can't see the punchline on it. Where's your conclusion on the doability, Ahmed? That's a question I have for you, all right? And then I'll throw it open to the rest of the people here, all right? Thank you, Ahmed.
Sure. And maybe before I answer that question, I want to highlight Sam Nicole, who's the appointed auditor, is also online with me this morning, and Sam may come and join and elaborate some of those items. But in terms of the capital doability, I think what really it showed is that in the previous LTP, capital program has been forecasted to increase substantially. And in the previous LTP, we spent a bit of time saying, well, you've gone from 30 odd million a year capital program to about 70 million. How are you going to do that? And I think at that time we were comfortable, given the new project management office that's been established, the resourcing that we put in place, the contracts that have been pre-agreed. We were comfortable at that time. This time round, I think the capital program is kind of a continuation of that process. And we've assessed whether the council is able to continue to deliver the capital program. And I think the conclusion we got to is that you've got resources and ability to do it. And some of those areas that you were unable to do it last few years were due to getting consents or working through some technical issues rather than ability to do the capital program.
Question about where's the punchline on the doability? I couldn't find it. You said you assessed the doability of the program, right?
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes, sorry. Sam, is that you? Yeah, where you go.
Yeah. Look, it's a challenge across all local authorities in the long-term plan, and the Office of the Auditor General gives us a framework to assess doability. Some of your peer councils, where there is a greater level of concern or a ramp up that's highly uncertain, results in a modification to the audit report as to whether the forecast activity in the long-term plan might be so out of reach of council that warrants the community's attention when they read the long-term plan. But we were able to get satisfied that for Kapiti it was sort of there or thereabouts, if I use those terms. Future prospective financial information has its inherent challenges, which we all understand. Particularly, we've recently concluded the LTP process. Obviously, earlier in this meeting, Darren, in reflecting on the credit rating and the level of capital activity, there are challenges across local authorities on how you'll do this work. And so you'll see on the graph on page 38, The current long-term plan's at not dissimilar levels from what was previously forecast, but maintains higher for longer, in part due to cost pressures, so the same work's expected to cost more, but also that you expect to do more work as well. But the takeaway is, we were able to get enough evidence that your capital assumption was reasonable from a doability perspective, in part looking at what you think you might do in the future and some of the risks to that, but also council's historical performance.
Thank you, Sam. That's very helpful. Sorry, the Mayor.
So I'll just make a comment. I'd like to go back to what Ahmed said about what an achievement this is from our staff to get this unqualified audit, because not only did we have a difficult situation in terms of the changing landscape and rising costs, which was the environment that this long-term plan was formed in, we also had elected members and governance that wanted to turn over every stone to make sure that we had the best plan going forward. And that involved a lot of extra work as well for staff, and I acknowledge that. And to come out the end with an unqualified audit and completed on time was a real achievement. And there was a lot of overtime work, burning the midnight oil, coming in on the weekends, and I'd just like to acknowledge that, that work that led to this outcome. So thanks very much to the team.
Thank you, Janet. Glenn?
Just a question. I just wanted some understanding on page 36 under EY perspective, key capital work activities for next 10 years. Based on the procedures form, we identified adjustments required as the capital expenditure for some projects did not reflect estimates of future costs based on supporting documents. Council made a number of adjustments. Can you just explain what that means and the reasons for it, or just give me some context to that, please?
Ahmed or Sam, one of you might like to respond? Yeah.
And I think what that really means is, as part of our work, we had to pick a sample and projects to ascertain whether the actual budgets that have been prepared and put into the long-term plan and are sourced and aligned with the evidence to support, whether that's a contract rates and codes obtained for these projects and so forth. And through that process, what we found is we found a number, not a lot, but few projects where the actual costs and that has been established through the underlying documentation, such as contractor contracts, did not align with the actual costs that have been forecasted. And through that, we've recommended some adjustments to align those. But that adjustment have not been booked through because it was not material to the overall long-term plan. And that's what that item is referring to.
Thank you, Ahmed. That's very clear. Thank you. Okay.
I just wonder if Darren wanted to comment on from the staff's perspective of that.
No, I wouldn't wade into that one. Yeah.
All right. Okay, if there's nothing further, I will move from...
Can I just ask, Chair, sorry, I'm just trying, I share your concern a bit that there are things dangling here. We say on page 36, we've reviewed, EY say they've reviewed selected planned projects, and then page 38, historical underperformance and some overperformance, but 48% for water supply. Is EY saying they believe that the projects that are listed on page 36, which I assume are the selected ones that they reviewed, that they believe, absent earthquakes, we are actually capable of delivering those things? The Paikakariki coastal protection within 7 years, Raumere South within a couple of years, specified dates. Are you saying you think you're confident that we've got the resources to do that, financial and human resources and physical resources, or is it just the list?
David, I'll answer that for you. On page 36, that's the list of the key projects we looked at.
Yep.
The long-term plans, prospective financial information. So the focus of those projects is seeing that the underlying documentation council maintains for its planning, both costing, timing, scope of works, flows through the financial model that ultimately forms part of the long-term plan. And so we've called out key projects. They reflect size and scale, risk, and other items selected either using our judgment or just as a bit of a dip test to see them. So page 36 is about, just being clear on the things we did look at in that work.
Yep.
On page 38, that's a more holistic assessment of overall doability, which was the chair's question. So we're providing some context. So the tables in the left-hand column are looking back at what you've actually done. It's important not to lose sight that the 3 years to June 2023 were impacted by COVID, which has had a range of impacts: your ability to do work, council's focus on other matters, cost, access to workforce, etc. So it's a little challenging to unpick, but as in response to the chair's question, for the LTP as a whole and the capital task forecast by the council, we concluded it was a reasonable assumption for council's forward planning that it could deliver the capital work it plans. That work includes the projects which, for other reasons as part of our work, we've sought to verify the detailed information maintained by council and its consistency through the overall modelling exercise.
Okay, thanks. I mean, we can expect the community, if they get hold of this or look it up, to say, yeah, okay, you were water supply, you were 48% historically, but we reckon the water supply projects above, you'll be able to deliver them. And they'll be holding the council saying, well, why didn't you deliver them? Or, well done, you did deliver them. Is that how it works?
Yeah, well, the community, if they take an interest in council's delivery, might ask you about it. Those amounts are factual, backward looking. I think they're the 3-year averages, aren't they, Ahmed?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yep, that's good. Thanks very much.
But just, I suppose, to round out, we didn't mean to cause confusion, but there are no hanging items from our perspective. We concluded our work on the 27th of June. We had the evidence we needed and issued an unqualified audit report, as Ahmed said. And so this report's the first opportunity to report back to this committee on that pretty significant work stream and really highlighting the areas of focus, giving some colour to our work and the things considered. So it doesn't reflect everything we do. And as Ahmed said, we're debriefing with management on our recommendations and sort of more detailed observations, and that's scheduled to come back to a later committee with management responses.
Thank you.
Very clear. Thank you. Good response. Thank you very much. Martin.
Yeah, look, thank you through the chair, and it sort of builds a little bit on what we were just talking about there. So would it be a fair comment to say, look, that graph on 38, page 38 is a little bit, no, not graph, the figures, the percentages are fairly up and down, but then beneath that, that's historical information. So beneath that shows what we're doing to pretty much, we'll try to look at bringing those percentages a little bit more in line to the 100% mark. Is that what I'm hearing there? That's where we're sort of heading with this. So I just say, for argument's sake, in 4 years' time, if this was reported back on, those percentages would potentially be a bit more in line to the 100% mark as such. Would that be a fair comment?
Yep, that's a good summary. Council's intention at the date of the plan was to deliver against it. So they'll be targeting at or around 100%.
Okay, all right, thank you.
If there's nothing more, I will move from the chair that the Risk Insurance Committee receives and notes this report, including the Ernst & Young closing report for audit for the 2024 to 34 long-term plan in Appendix 1. I move from the chair. Was there a seconder by Liz? All right. Right. I'll allow Liz to second it. All those in favour, please say aye. The contrary, no. The ayes have it. Thank you. Now, we have one other item here on the control findings from the Ernst & Young 2022-23 financial audit. Who's presenting this? Ninka is. Yeah. Ninka will present this. These are 3 items which have been on the agenda for a while, and I now see that 2 of them basically have been completed, with one still in progress and likely to be part of it, likely to be carried over. Do you want to say anything, Ninka, or we take it as read? I think these have been on the agenda for some time at successive meetings. All right. Is there any question or comment from anybody? Look, I think in that case, I will move from the chair that the Risk and Insurance Committee notes the progress made to resolve the council findings from Ernst & Young for the year end 30 June 2023 to be reassessed as part of the audit for the year. No, it needs to be moved by somebody else. How about the mayor? Moved by the mayor, seconded by, you've already had a turn. Lawrence, would you like a turn? Right.
Sure, I'll second it.
Seconded by Lawrence, all right. Your right of introduction? What do you mean? What do you want to do? Oh, all right. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I just want to thank the staff for this wonderful report.
It has been moved by you
Can we
and seconded
debate
by
it?
Lawrence. I'll
Can we
put the
debate
motion
it?
in favour. We'll say aye. The contrary will no.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Now, let's see where we are now. God, we're making a bit of progress. So we now are moving to the health and safety report. Right. Right. And welcome, Kelly, to your first meeting of the. You've been here 4 weeks, and welcome to your first meeting of this excellent committee, which I'm sure you will enjoy, right?
I believe Rachel is on her way back.
Is she coming down or what?
I think so.
Whatever. Anyway, the report is before us. Do you want to add anything to it? You did draw our attention to something about ACC in the preparatory meeting we had, and you might like to refer to that as some change in documentation or whatever.
Yeah, so what we want to do now that I'm on board is just look at the data that we're providing and look at the sources that we can get that data from to give you better governance reporting on health and safety matters. So this time around we included ACC data, and next time around we'll include a range of sources.
What ACC data? I mean, we haven't had ACC data.
No, we haven't
before.
reported that before to Risk and Assurance. So with a new payroll manager on board who's looking at data and insights, and my role, we have looked at the average ACC leave. And then from that, we're going to look at improving our gradual return to work program to reduce the amount of time staff are off when they have accidents.
Would this affect our ACC levy?
Hopefully it'll make it better.
That's what I mean. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's something we need to bear in mind, that the better our performance is under health and safety, the better, the less we pay in ACC premiums, right?
Yes.
Okay, okay. So, Janet, you want to be first, and who else is there? And did you?
I've got 1 point, Chief.
Oh, David, you're behind me. I can't see. It's very disconcerting.
Do you want him to go first?
Okay, away you go, David. Please go first.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to jump the queue.
No.
But just for the benefit of the rest of the committee, on page 67, I asked yesterday for the Paraparaumu Operations Depot. We have about one incident a week, and I've just asked if there are any trends. I mean, there is incidents, not accidents, but can we have a bit of work done on that? Except the pools will have a lot of slips and slides and things. But are these a lot of cases of people spilling chemicals, or is it people nearly getting run over, or is there any trend, or are they 52 or 60 odd unrelated events? So we don't have the answer yet, but for the future, when it gets to one a week, we probably should
Yeah,
be knowing what it is.
That's a very good point. If we're talking about incidents, what do we mean by an incident? I mean, for example, at the swimming pool, is somebody falling over? Is it somebody fouling the water? Is it somebody having an argument? Or what is it? You know, there's all these different sorts of this life's rich tapestry which comes out of swimming pools.
Yeah, you just want to look for a trend in case then you can do something about it. If you can see a lot of people are spilling chemicals, well, do they need to have a better system or whatever?
Yeah, so we have started looking
Thank
at
you,
the drain management that's occurring. In terms of the depot incidents, there were 56 in the last financial year. We've looked across those 56 and we couldn't identify any clear trends. They're quite spread across 14 different categories. The highest one being vehicle and moving plant incidents. None of those involved staff being significantly injured or requiring time off work.
Thresher bee stings
Yeah.
and ankle sprains.
Thanks.
Thank you. Lawrence, you have the call.
Cool. I've just got a question about one of the reported severe, major or moderate events. The third one down, which is related to, so page 68, aquatics, wet rescue, with a customer following her sister into the deep end. Just a question, when I had kids that I actively supervised at the aquatic centre, there was a deep water pass that was operated where kids had to get a deep water pass before they were allowed even close to the deep end. So my question is, have we removed that deep water pass, or was it just a situation where we weren't monitoring whether the child had a deep water pass to be that close to the deep water, or even be considering going into it? So it's just a question.
Yeah, no, look, thank you for that question through the chair. In terms of that, we don't have that specific detail around it. You know, my understanding is we haven't removed that deep water pass. What we'll do is we'll follow up on that and come back to you with a response.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I know that deep water pass was a bit of a pain for things, but it was part of the health and
Still
safety process,
Yeah.
so I'm
Yeah.
glad to hear that it's still there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is there any further points?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, the mayor first.
Oh, sorry, Bernie. So there seem to be quite a lot of incidents to do with the aquatic centre. I think that it's usual that there are, because it's a dangerous environment, but things like tripping over a power lead by a pool seems to be a really potentially very serious event. You know, we've got electrics and water and people all together. And then we've got an increase in fecal incidents of, by my calculation, 1,200%, which is quite significant. And I know from the frequent tummy bugs that I used to pick up off my kids when they were that age, it potentially has quite devastating impacts on families. It's not something to be laughed at. So I just wonder, and with what the Deputy Mayor just said too, is it an area that we kind of need to look at to make sure that we've got aqua nappies on prominent display, people spotting maybe babies that don't have aqua nappies on, that we're making sure that we're not putting power leads in the way of people while they chat to aquafit instructors, that we make sure that we're issuing deep water passes if that's appropriate, particularly when we have big inflatables that people can go under, you know, during the holidays, things like that. Just maybe it just feels like it's time for a general, you know, kind of in-depth look at that particular area, just because there's a number of things kind of floating through, and it's such a dangerous environment.
No pun intended.
Sorry?
Sorry.
Floating through, yeah.
Apologies, Mia. Couldn't resist. Look, I think to your point, you know, that we're seeing what we would call these lower level incidents occurring across council. There's some debate and challenge in the pool space around if a child is walking too fast and trips through their own accord, where the responsibility sits in terms of that, and we're working on looking at that in more detail. However, I think what you're potentially alluding to, and it's certainly what Kelly and I have noticed, is a need for just more basic education and upskilling across our organisation around basic health and safety and what we do and what we don't do. That would be my observation. But curious on Kelly's observation, although Kelly has been here for what, 4 weeks now, I think?
I think this week 4. Yeah, no, I will say aquatics are very good at reporting everything, so it does make that number seem very large compared to other sites.
Good point.
They have very much taken a stance of they will report every single incident that occurs, whether it's necessarily workplace health and safety or not. So that's good, and we want to encourage that. And then what we will get better at doing is filtering that in these reports so that we're really clear where the issue lies. And that'll be part of that trend management, and then we'll be able to put resourcing into where the education piece lies as well. So.
And say you get something like the fecal incidents. Do you then say, okay, we've got a lot of these happening. Are we doing everything we can to prevent it? Is there a formal follow up to improve prevention?
Yeah, you know, look, there absolutely should be, and that's an operational need. So the pool should be looking at that and looking at what they can do to prevent that. So again, I think that comes back to health, safety and wellbeing, working with the business that they understand what the requirements are.
Yeah, and I can say for the fecal incidents, I've only been here 4 weeks, but as a parent, I use that pool, and they do have nappies at the counter, and they do say to me, do you have a nappy? Do you need one?
Excellent to hear.
So I've got a 3-year-old, so they are pretty.
If a kid has an explosion in the
consistent
pool,
with it.
that's sort of
No,
quite
Nappy's
hard
gonna.
to-
Let's stop talking about feculence. Enough already. Sorry, I brought it up.
Okay. Sean is, if I may say, busting, to say something.
As long as he's not exploding.
Yeah. Oh, here we go.
Oh, how do you follow that? Sorry, I know if Brendan Owens, who's the group manager for that area, or Steve, the manager were here, they'd respond in that so we are accredited member of PoolSafe. We have an internal health and safety committee that meets once a month, and I'm the group manager that's represented on that committee. And aquatics, libraries, because of the number of people that move through those facilities, so the pool has 250,000 people through annually. That order at the Kapiti Coast Aquatic Centre, libraries again, both those present high numbers in terms of incidents because of that large number of customers that move through them. But we have a regular item at those meetings where we discuss trends. Those detailed reports come to the Health and Safety Committee, and there are standard operating procedures and follow-up procedures for dealing with those types of trend issues. So, and we're regularly discussing items around at that level of operational detail at those committee meetings, and they're fed back to the aquatic staff themselves. So they have a regular item on their team meetings that talks to health and safety, and then again they have action items, and then they will register those against individuals in terms of follow-up, specifically for the trips and falls. I know with the incident with the deep end, they're doing some work during the shutdown to improve the markings and signage around depth changes at the pool. That's one of the corrective actions that have come through for a previous incident they had there with the flying fox. So it absolutely is front of mind for the organisation, and especially for the aquatics and the libraries. You'll see them represented well in terms of numbers. And the operations depot, there's 45, 50 staff that operate out of that facility, but it's also access through there to the wastewater treatment plant, Paraparumu. We have the EOC, which adjoins that site. We have animal management on that site. So it is a very large site with a lot of activity. There are filling points there for potable water that contractors use. So there's a lot of activity on that site. So having 50, again, accepting what we've been talking about in terms of analysing trends, and that's what SLT do, I don't believe it represents a significant number when you consider the amount of movements in and across that site on any daily basis is significant.
It's absolutely brilliant, Sean.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I had another point about something else.
I've got Janet here, Bertie, you've got, and Glenn, and Liz, right? They're not showing up on my thing here for some reason. Anyway. No, it's not. Oh, okay, here we are. There we are. Okay, away you go, you do worship, away you go. And then Bernie, right?
Thank you. I just had a different issue. So right at the top of the executive summary, I'm sure I might be jumping the gun. Somebody else might have spotted this, but the number of work issues going up in terms of kind of well-being of staff. There's not a lot of detail around that, but I'm just wanting to ask the same questions, and it's probably in place as it was with the pool, but it's our job to ask the questions. So do we gather data on whether that's caused by internal factors? Do we do benchmarking against other organisations and whether they're experiencing the same trends? Because a lot of those things, to me, would be, I'm seeing that reflected in the community at large. So do we have a good understanding of whether our trends in terms of emotional well-being are reflective of the general population, or whether there's something happening here which is particularly contributing? I know you've identified a couple of internal factors, but...
Look, through the chair, look, very good question. Now, I think we're seeing that people struggling, as you've pointed out, within communities, and that plays into work. Later in the paper, we make reference in paragraph 3.4, sub-bullet point 4, around a question that we asked around overall health and well-being in our Gallup survey, and it did come through as one of our lowest scores. So this is telling us something. Have we unpacked it yet? No. However, we are aware that it's a concern. We're aware that it's on the CE's top of mind for Darren and for SLT, which is one of the reasons why we are actually bringing in Dr. Paul Woods to start some conversations with our people around that mental health and wellbeing and how they care for themselves. So we haven't unpacked it in its entirety, but it's certainly something that we need to step into.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, my question relates to the same situation. In fact, I think this report, probably done by Steve, of all the impact of events to the pool is quite valid. I rather have this rather than not being presented with this information, because the impact is not only just for children, but it's also for seniors. And I'm very concerned that when the thinking of staff is thinking for children and young people, fair enough, but they don't give the same consideration, in my opinion, to seniors. So again, that we got the we have a cord when they're doing some work and they have a power cord running across the pool. Seniors trip on that because they, are struggling to walk, and they trip on these things. They have a mat. Sometimes staff put the mat on over the power cord, and sometimes they don't. That's why it happens, because. Okay, and the second thing is access to the beach access along McLean Street and beach access along McLean Street, along McLean Street, and Manly Street, those beach accesses. They're actually dangerous. Now, I did a posting on Facebook and some people objected to what I was saying, but I actually walk over it to see if I can manage, and without handrails. And again, I would like, health and safety, focus on the old people. Can they manage this? Do they need handrails to do it? So that's my comments, that think about the interests of the older as well as the younger people.
Should I respond? Through Chair, Bernie, in response to your questions around accessibility to the pools, this is only my own experience because I actually swim there myself, and I've actually been really taken back by seeing some of our lifeguards helping our older customers. Our goal is to ensure that all people are supported in terms of their accessibility. Yeah, I mean, it's been my experience. I've been really taken back by some of the things that I've seen, really touched, but certainly noted. You can have a conversation with Steve, who manages the centre, around that, because he's absolutely passionate about delivering an exceptional experience to everyone who attends our facilities. In terms of the beach access, I was just wondering if Sean might want to comment on that, given that it sort of falls well outside of the remit of health, safety and wellbeing internally for council. Sean, is there anything you'd like to add?
Certainly, I'm not aware of any of the specific site, but best option there would be to put a service request into the council's call centre if there's an issue in terms of accessibility, or if you think there's a problem at one of the particular access ways, and that will get forward to staff and they'll follow that up directly.
Got it. Thank you.
Glenn and
just quickly, your health and safety induction module assigned versus completions is quite low. Just two comments, or one comments, please. How important is this in terms of risk reduction across the organisation? And just a comment around that. Is it a cultural issue? Is it a time issue? Is it just some comments around that? Thanks.
Got it. Thank you.
So through the chair, the induction module as it stands at the moment, the health and safety induction module is incorporated into the onboarding induction. So we can't split out the full stats as to how many staff have completed the health and safety section. So what we're looking at doing is creating a standalone health and safety induction module. And it is really important because that sets the scene for the culture that the council has for health and safety for all staff coming on board. So it is important that we get that right. So we're currently starting to draft the content for that at the moment. So.
Thank you.
Liz, you're next, and then you've got Martin and Cam.
I'll try and be quick. Look, health and safety is a bit of a thing of mine, as some people know. And you know, we've been grappling with reporting in this area for a wee while now. And you know, your predecessor had produced some quite lengthy reports and went to enormous trouble to give us the information. I guess my comment is, yeah, this is clearly in a different format than we've had in the past because we've got different people doing it. But my expectation in terms of the governance role is that we would be presented with more than just some statistics. We really need that governance information around what are the key trends, what are the key risks, what are the key actions that we need to take as an organisation to improve how we're shaping up in this area. And so, you know, I would hope that when we next receive a report that those sort of things will be contained in the report, because just bare statistics don't give us the full picture. And as you've found out from the number of questions around the table, around what does this mean? What does this mean? So that's, I'd just like to pass that on. The other thing is, I just would like to put in a plug for the Kapiti Wellbeing Collective. So this is a new thing for Kapiti, which I've been instrumental in putting together. So we have now established an incorporated society for the Kapiti Wellbeing Collective. We've got a website that's about a millimetre away from launching that has a number of wellbeing providers in it. And I would really hope that council would take advantage of this collective in terms of, I don't know whether you could promote it to staff or perhaps even look at giving staff vouchers to use for some of the providers there. There are some amazing people there doing some amazing things, you know, around counselling, you know, massage, all sorts of therapies, inner child therapy. You know, there's a whole range of stuff that we are trying to bring to the surface to raise awareness of. And yeah, just wanted to make you aware of that. That facility.
Respond to these things collectively. We'll move on to
do that.
Cam is next, right? And then Martin, right?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just looking at the dashboard on page 66, two things sort of stood out to me. The biological hazards in unknown organisms has gone from 0 to 12, and I see that as the hazardous issues due to feces in the swimming pools. Not trying to raise the subject again, but that 0, did we just have a really good quarter, or has it just not been reported this way before? It just seems unusual to go from 0 to 12.
Don't know.
Right, and now Martin, and then we'll.
Yeah,
wrap
sorry,
it up.
David.
I think that's
Sorry,
enough.
David, I had two questions. So that was a real quick one.
All right.
And just the overdue corrective actions for the incidents rated severe and major and moderate. There is one outstanding there, which is not ideal. Do we know if that's going to be closed in the near future, or is it a long thing that we can't actually fix at the moment?
Well, maybe you could respond to Liz's and
can respond
Cam's,
to
and then we'll go to Martin, all right?
Yeah, sure. Through the chair, I'll just respond, Councillor Coe. In terms of that, the reporting, it's something that is incredibly important to us as an organisation and to us as a function. It's something that we'll be working on, and we'll be working through a process on how we actually reach out to this committee and understand what those needs are in terms of reporting. It's really challenging trying to manage the governance with the operational, because there's a tendency to want to go into the detail to understand, but we need to support this group in having those conversations at a governance level. But look, it's certainly on our radar. Around the health, safety and wellbeing, as I pointed out earlier, it's certainly something that we're aware of. We'll be looking at it from a psychosocial perspective. So, you know, wellbeing is it's about how you design roles, it's around culture, it's about how we positively reinforce. You know, it's incredibly broad, and thankfully that's something that Kelly brings with her, is a real expertise in that area. And in terms of the 0 to 12, I can't comment on that. You know, I would hope that we just had a great quarter with no pool incidents, but something that we'll look into.
Thank you, through the chair. And mine's just a quick comment. It's actually in relation to what Bernie was talking to. I note that we're upgrading a lot of pathways and everything into the beaches, and in regards to risk, we talked a lot of the upgrades about making things better on those specific ones, but I do wonder whether we've been putting time into actually putting any signage around the ones that we're going to not be upgrading, saying that they're not suitable for access. Because people that perhaps have mobility issues can be halfway down a path before they realise that that could be the state. So just something to take on board to perhaps pass. I can pass it on to Gareth as well. But if we are decommissioning things as well, I think it's important that we put that noticing out there, letting people know that that might not be, that some of these things might not be suitable for access as well. And I think maybe that's something we do forget about as an aspect. So just a reminder more than anything else.
Yeah, excuse me, Chair, I just realised that I didn't respond to the question around the corrective actions. That's with regards to health and safety audit framework, looking at contractors to ensure their compliance. It's something that we're working through. It's work in progress. Yeah.
Well, in that case, look, I think we should move on. Would somebody care to move that the committee notes the health and safety report? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by the Mayor. All those in favour will please say aye. The contrary, no. Carried. Colleagues, it's now 11:45. I talked stupidly about finishing at 12, but I'd like to suggest that we don't have a break, that we continue and we aim to finish about 12:30 for lunch. We did have a fire break, which enabled us to stretch our legs. So if that's agreeable, I'm proposing that we press on, all right? You think I'm on fire? Thank you, Lawrence. Okay. Nyenka, top 10 organisational risk report. All these lovely colours. Oh, fantastic. In your hands, Nyenka, to take us through in any particular significant changes or events you want to draw our attention to. Thank you.
Was my one on? Yes. Kia ora katoa. The top 10 organizational risks, I'm going to take the report as read. I'm just going to point out that in section number 10 of the report, there's a little recap of the work that was done by SLT, aligning with our strategic outcomes of the report, page 69. The normal council report. I did a little update of the work that has been done during workshops and meetings leading up to changes in the report. Any changes that came out of those conversations are highlighted in blue in the report. And maybe looping back to the discussion that went before, when we talked about having an item on this agenda for this committee to talk about risk, this is it. Reform risk, how we deal with reforms from central government coming at us, including Three Waters, is under organizational risk number 6. There's actually a treatment included that it is talking about the work we need to do under the Water Done Well reform, with a time frame in there. And so it does come up when we have these discussions in SLT. We talk about these big reform risks. It's a bit the same for recovery. It's included in emergency management, which is organizational risk number 9. There's a lot of treatments in place. One is the development of a recovery plan. And that loops again in turn to organizational risk number 4, which is climate change, land use planning, and that sits in that reduction area of the 4R discussion. So I just thought I'll point that out. Happy to answer any questions.
That's very helpful to link it. Okay, here. Okay, the floor is open. Liz is first. Oh, that's right. You are first.
Yeah, I just want to say that this is a very, very comprehensive report, and well done. It's excellent, very, very thorough. I guess for me, looking at it, I'm quite concerned about the social licence risk and comms in general, and it's something that we've talked to Darren about, just engagement with the community. And you know, that's something that we are dealing with outside of this committee. But other than that, I don't have any concerns, and I think it's an excellent report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to move.
David, are you
it,
still
yeah.
online? Or have you gone to the golf course? Sorry. He's not online. He had some questions yesterday, but you could deal with those separately, Nyenka. All right? All right. All right. Anything else? Okay. And would somebody care to move? Liz will move whatever it's supposed to be moved, which is somewhere here. Right. Liz will move. No. Gosh. Thank you very much. I need a lot of help here as chair. Anyway, we note this report. That's moved by who did we say? By Liz, and the seconder is Jocelyn.
I'll second it just to prove I'm here.
Oh, that's vicious. All right. You're putting me down, David. All right. Moved by David in the Gold Coast. He's waiting, patient to get to the golf course or the pool or whatever. Anyway, don't play golf in the rain, David. The lightning might come, right? Okay. Anyway, it's moved and seconded accordingly. I will put it. All those in favour will say aye. To the contrary, no. It is carried. Now, Nyenka, you're also going to talk to us. You'll look after your internal audit work program presentation, right? Let me just turn to that. Page 108. 109. Yeah. Here we are. 109. Right. Okay. We're in your hands, Nyenka.
I'm just going to take this report as read, noting in particular sections 7 and 9 that has an explanation around the validation process of audit findings and what is the best practice. And it's been reflected with adding of a category called finalized, which means it's going through the validation process before being completed.
Just remind me of the size of our internal audit staff currently.
We have one internal auditor.
That's all. Okay. Still one. It's open for discussion. If there's none, well, if lunch back and sure. Would somebody care to move? Thank you, Jocelyn. Moved by Jocelyn, seconded by Liz again. I will put it. All those in favour will say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Now, Treasury Management Policy. Ian. Come forward, please. The ex-Chief Financial Officer, who's now the Acting Chief Financial Officer. How long for, Ian? How long are you the Acting Chief Financial Officer?
12 months.
12 months? Wow, we're going to be seeing a bit of you. Okay, all right. Well, anyway, look, I leave it to you to introduce this report and make any comments you want to. There's a couple of issues there about non-compliance with old policy, which we discussed yesterday, but otherwise it's fairly standard stuff. But I'll leave it to you to introduce it, Ian. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello, everybody. Yes, so you recently adopted an updated Treasury policy. This is the last report. That new policy comes into play 1 July, so this is the last report against the previous policy. And you'll see on the cover page there, page 111, we've got 3 areas of non-compliance by what I would call relatively small margins. So the first is in the area of debt maturities, and so this is, you can see there we've got in the old policy requires that it prescribes how much debt we have in each sort of age bracket, and we're slightly under in the 5 to 10 year period we had 6%. Versus the policy minimum of 10%. So a couple of comments there. The new policy has a slightly more flexible requirement where it simply says no more than 40% of debt in any rolling 12-month period. And so we will be compliant with that policy. And the other comment I just wanted to make is that there is actually a cost impact here in that the longer dated debt carries a higher margin. So the difference we actually had, we took 10 million a couple of weeks ago, and the difference between taking a 3-year term versus 6-year worked out to about $35,000 per annum on 10 mil. So there's real money at stake here, and so we'd prefer to be slightly shorter than this policy would drive us towards, and the new policy will accommodate that. The other two areas of non-compliance related to our hedging. And so the old policy is that we have a minimum of 55% of our debt book covered, and we fix it by way of swaps, and we're slightly under that 54% versus 55, and we'll be slightly under the new policy requirement as well for a period of time. And so what's happened there is in the high interest rate environment we've been through the last couple of years, we've resisted taking on new swaps. So we came in sort of 2021, we were relatively highly hedged at about 85%, and that's the legacy of the program that had been put in place in the years prior to that, and that's carried us through very well over the last couple of years. So we've enjoyed relatively low interest rates, but we've held off purchasing more swaps because the market has been expensive. That's now turning, so over the last couple of months the rates have become much more favourable, and we'd expect over the next 2 or 3 months to enter back into swaps, and the council is going to benefit from that quite a lot. The rates are quite a bit lower than they were a couple of months ago. And that's really my comments. The third point relates to the same thing. Basically, our deferral of purchasing more swaps, again, has meant we're non-compliant in that area. But as I say, I'd expect within 3 months we'll be back where we want to be from a policy perspective, and better off financially.
So one of the 3 breaches is rectified under the new, is okay under the new policy.
Yep.
The others will be once time has passed, right?
I would estimate within 3 months.
At least one of them, you made a decision knowing you were breaching the policy because it was financially sensible to do so, right?
Yeah.
All right. Are there any questions? I mean, I really think this is important because we keep saying all the time that the ratings agencies are very concerned about the quality of Treasury management, and they make complimentary remarks about our forward purchasing and all that sort of stuff, and that's very important that we get this right all the time with the assistance of our Treasury advisors. Right? Are there any questions or comments? If there are none, would somebody move the relevant recommendation that we note and receive this report, we note of the non-compliance, and we note its compliance with all other aspects? Would somebody be prepared to move that? Moved by the Deputy Mayor and seconded by Councillor Coe. I will put the motion in favour, say aye. The contrary, no. It is carried. Legislative compliance. Now it's your turn, Sarah. Right. As I said at the meeting yesterday, I'm looking forward to David Seymour's attack on this compliance requirements, which I'm sure is going to occur soon. Right. Wouldn't be before time. Anyway, there is a comment building up all the time about the burden being placed on councillors, and a lot of it is compliance with law. Some of it is action, but some of it is actually just, straight compliance. Anyway, we're in your hands. Sarah, what would you like to tell us, or anything in particular you want to draw our attention to?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Look, I'll largely take this report as read. I'll note that I think there are about 7 new legislative non-compliance matters. They're all the same sort of thing that you sometimes see in the report. Low risk, a few relating to privacy, some relating to our standard legislative compliance requirements under the LGOIMA, the RMA, etc. So look, I'll take the report as read and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Sarah. David, you'd have a couple, so go ahead, right?
Yeah, I have one on the new list. I raised it yesterday too. A6.
A6,
we say 82,
126.
Page 126, yes. It says 82% of resource intensive process. So 18 were okay. Resource intensive process on average within 26 working days, but that's a bit of a naughty statistic, which is higher than the 20. So you might think they're only 6 days over, or 6 days over a week, but that's not the case, because the 20 working days is a limit. It's not an average. So you can get an average of 26 by doing a few things in the first week, and some of them taking 4 months. and you'll still get an average of 26 working days. So I really think that I don't want to see that report in that format again, put it that way, because it's fudging how long some of them are taking. And this is after you've extended the time because you've asked for more information and all that. All those things have gone on. Even then, we're obviously, if the average is 26, a lot could be under, but a hell of a lot could be over, and we don't know how far. And just defining around that out, I don't know how we can put a complete tick on that. It's obviously got to be incomplete. It's not compliant. So I really want to see proper figures, not averages mixed up with deadlines.
David, just on that point though, that's what the law says. That is the statutory requirement.
It is. So 20.
Yeah, but the law doesn't say average it. The law says
Within
20 working days.
Right.
Not 26. The law says 20 working days.
Mhm.
Our average is 26, but we have no way of working out from that whether how many were done in 5 days and how many were done in 55 days.
But even if we did, yeah. I mean, the question as we discussed yesterday is really there's a floor or a ceiling. What's the maximum anyone should have to wait? Right? Is another
20 days.
Yeah.
20 days is the maximum anyone should have to wait. That's what the law says. What we need to know, if we're going to make any sense of this report, is what does an average of 26 working days mean? What's the spread? How many were done in 10 and how many were done in 40? No idea.
All right, that can be looked at, right?
Yeah, we committed to following up, and I think Laura has her microphone on. We had. Did you want to make a comment, Laura?
Just only that, just to clarify exactly what that could look like expressed differently, because is it the percentage on within statutory timeframes that's important? Is that what the committee's seeking a view on, or do you need to know what the average is, because we actually report that back as an average working day through our KPIs?
Well, an average is meaningless. What we need to know is what are the best, what are the worst. Well, I guess we don't care if they're all done within 20 working days, like the law requires you to do. That's fine. If they're over, those that are over 20 working days, why are they over? Is there a trend? Have we not got enough staff? Have we not? Does it require expertise we don't have? Some explanation of why we're over, and 26 doesn't tell me how far they're over. They could be 52 over, because you're averaging.
Okay. So it's first of all, how many are over, and by how much are they over? What's the spread of the overness? All right, would be.
And then is and why?
I'm sure that can be done.
We can look at that.
Thank you very much. That's a response from.
Can I just make one further comment just to clarify just those questions, so that we can certainly discuss offline ahead of the next meeting, providing an upper and a lower limit as a bit of a guide as for what is the maximum that it might take and what is the minimum. That is something that isn't there. We've got the average, but the reasons. The reasons are relating to the number that came in. A number of applications came off hold, so an increase in the volume, as well as challenges relating to staff capacity, which does have an impact where the time frame is 20 working days, as our team experience in the Lagoima space. So we work hard to meet the statutory time frame. Sometimes if there are other factors outside of our control, that can be a challenge. So those reasons are there. And we can have a conversation offline ahead of the next meeting to make sure that the explanation is what you're wanting.
Agreed. Next item. Anything else? Oh, sorry, Jocelyn. Sorry, let me. Bernard is first, then Jocelyn. Right.
Yeah. Thank you. My question relates to page 134, where you speak about the health, infectious, and notifiable disease regulations. My question is, you've got there ensure compliance with reporting provisions. Who do you report to?
Ministry of Health, I presume.
Yeah, Ministry of Health.
The answer is Ministry of Health, apparently.
So can I follow up on that then?
Sure.
Then does this get reported to any of the council committees? I'll speak generally, maybe David, if he's listening, may have a comment. It concerns me that I've noticed council has prosecuted various people for various matters, but it doesn't not seem to get reported back to a council committee. It reminds me of Mr. Bates in the post office, if anyone's been following that, that the concern there in the UK is a certain body can do their own prosecutions, but there's no third party involved. So can I ask, does all the prosecutions or fines, do they ever get reported back to a committee of a council?
So the litigation report that is in the public excluded part of this meeting does report on prosecution. Yes. In terms of lower level regulatory work, Laura, did you want to make any further comment in terms of the types of reporting in your team?
In terms of the reporting we do, so we do monthly reporting that goes up to SLT on anything like that, and any sort of high-level prosecutions have to go through a enforcement decision-making group, and that comprises of GMs and our legal team and our iwi partnerships team. So there's certainly controls in place to monitor that high-end level of prosecutions, and yeah, we do monitor and keep an eye on how many the lower stuff's coming through.
My concern is not reported to council committee. So that's my concern, because it's done internally. What the speaker said, it's done internally, and I think, well, I would like to, my own personal view, I like to see consideration be given to these reports also going to a council committee.
Do these prosecutions get publicly, are they covered in the media? Some places they are, right?
Nah,
Not here?
I can answer that.
Thank you.
It's pretty low-level stuff, right? Unless it's something that we've seen recently with Greater Wellington, and not something that you'd certainly negotiate through committee. You know, the Crown Law sets really clear guidelines as to what evidence is required, whether on balance of probability or otherwise, beyond reasonable doubt, to inform decision making.
It's just about it being reported.
Yes, and I'd just come back to Sarah's point that we report prosecutions through this committee.
But it's in the public excluded section. So that really answered your point. It does come here.
Well,
when we have a look at it when we come to the public excluded report, okay? Jocelyn, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, I actually just wanted to follow up on David's comments in relation to E6, which is on page 226. So, you know, this is talking about the legal requirement for meeting the 20 working day period. To me, it would be really useful to have a bar graph that showed the number of applications and the time that they took to actually meet, you know, basically to process those applications, so you can actually see, you know, whether they're just over or above that time frame. The other comment too, and I know this is not a legal requirement, but looking at it from the customer's point of view, there's nothing in here which talks about the whole length of time that an application takes to be processed, and in many situations that's way longer than the 20 working days. It can be actually a number of years. Thank you.
Just so we can certainly reflect on those points. To the first point around a bar graph, I mean, that's certainly something we could do. Laura mentioned earlier that the way that we've reported it and reporting the compliance level rather than the non-compliance level, the 18%, aligns with the performance reporting. A lot of these are performance measures as well, so there is additional data that we provide through other channels, which is more operational. The purpose of this report is to report on non-compliance rather than the operational ins and outs. And I think to your second point, and we can have a chat about this with the chair and an independent member, but you know, my question would be: is the whole length of time for this report, or is that a separate conversation as part of, you know, operational business, our performance measures, etc.?
Well, you face a fairly big credibility risk if you're talking about risk. If you're not processing a lot, 18 to 20% of your resource consents within time, that's a fairly good PR social license risk, I would have thought.
I think the answer though is you can do that information, right? You know. Sorry, Laura.
Sorry, just to add to that, I'd
Laura,
support.
thank you very much. Yes.
I'd support Sarah's comments that the purpose of this is to demonstrate statutory compliance, and that involves using the tools we have. But I appreciate that there is a comment around the whole customer service aspect, which is probably a different conversation. And just to note as well, and I'm sure you've been briefed on this, that we have compared ourselves to other councils in the Wellington region, and we are tracking average, if not a bit better than other councils in terms of timeframes. So I think what you're seeing here isn't unusual, but obviously there's always room for improvement, and we are working on that.
Yes, I mean, what you're saying is legislative compliance is legislative compliance, either yes or no, right? And that's what's required. But I mean, it's been suggested we'd just like some more background information behind it, because it is something which does attract public attention, right? Yeah. All right. Okay, anything further on this? In that case, the Deputy Mayor has kindly agreed to move whatever he's supposed to move here. Where is it? That we note the legislative non-compliance for the fourth quarter of the financial year as an attachment 1, moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by the Mayor. All those in favour will say aye, the contrary no. Carried. Thank you. Now, next item, Forward Work Programme. This is just a small item, I think. If we just refer in particular, I'll speak to this as Chair. It's set out, the proposal set on page 146, all right? This is our future work programme. It's fairly standard, but obviously the next big one is October, when we do the draft annual report, which is a real important and time-consuming one. November I will be overseas, but I will dial in from Washington DC, where I'm observing the US elections. I will have observed the US elections anyway. Meeting on March. Oh, notice we've got the emergency management response coming back to see us in November, and that was arranged when they came in February. And I think in the next column, in the next meeting 6 on the 11th of March, I think that should be emergency management recovery team come to us. As the people we've just had will come back and give us an update. So that's, with that amendment, that's what is the proposed work programme. Is there any comment on that? And we will talk about, we'll consider the issues that I raised earlier about water and credit rating as to where they might slot in at an appropriate time in that programme, right? But obviously they should slot in when there's something to report, or in the case of water, seeing as that's ongoing, that could be a standing item which would be added depending upon what's agreed between the Mayor and the Chief Executive as to what might be appropriate, right? Okay. So there might be a standing item, possible standing item on water, and I think the credit rating one is even when it occurs, really, right? Okay. Is everybody happy? Well, I will move from the chair that with the amendments suggested by the chair, no, somebody else should really move. Somebody would move that with the amendment suggested by the chair that the programme of work be approved. All right. Yes, should be approved for the 2024-25 calendar year. As said on Appendix 1. Will somebody move that?
Yeah, I'll move that.
Thank you, David. Thank you. And seconded by Liz. I'll put that.
Can I just add a personal tribute to you, Chair, and your devotion to duty and going to Washington to supervise the election, and don't put your life on the line if Mr. Trump decides to attack the Capitol.
I'm determined to stop any cheating, right? So there we are. Okay.
I just have something I'd like to throw into the conversation today, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
And just it relates to an item I brought up at our off-site day on Tuesday with regard to annual reporting and reporting back to the community. I'm wishing to do some work around reporting by activity level and with activities, costs, what are the outcomes from those activities and what are the service levels associated with that. And that may flow on into, and just the annual report formats and that sort of thing. So, or
Right.
it might be entirely separate, I don't know, but I'm just flagging I wish to start a conversation around that to delve into more detail on some of those areas.
Well, you're foreshadowing, Liz, that you may wish to propose some changes to the format of the annual report. The
yes.
annual report has certain statutory requirements,
Yes,
but
this
it's
is over and
permissive.
above.
Permissive. It doesn't
Over and
limit
above
us.
the statutory
We can
requirements.
report what we like as long as it's going to be, as long as it will pass the audit test. But
and
so-
also a discussion around core activities versus non-core activities.
Well, it might be useful, so that's October. I mean, but the draft annual report would be being prepared now. You're thinking about it now, I presume. Sorry. Cheryl, you want to make a comment, Cheryl? Please do. Sorry.
Morning, afternoon, everyone. Yeah, we are. We're into the second week of audit now for the annual report. It's actually quite a lengthy process. Takes about 6 weeks to audit and then finesse and get through to you. So I would say that for this annual report, it is it's too late. However, I wasn't at your offsite the other day, but I know that we did discuss some improvements in our slides, improvements to performance reporting. And those items that you talk about, Liz, are things that Mark and I had a good discussion about and are keen to see in performance reports and annual reports that come out of the new LTP.
Yep.
So your first performance report for the LTP will come to you, will come to the SOV committee in December, if I remember rightly.
Okay, that gives us a bit more time.
So you will see those improvements, and what Mark and I also talked about was that that David from the RAC committee would also get some input to what they want to see in performance reports and therefore in annual reports as well.
Okay.
So we do intend to engage with you on that.
Sure, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We note that. Okay. Now, what's the next item? Confirmation of minutes.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Oh, sorry.
Just over
Sorry,
here.
Martin. Beg
Look,
your pardon.
I just saw your dates there, and I was just updating my calendar with the audit and risk, and just wanted to flag. I noticed that there is a save the date localism showcase all day on Thursday, the 21st of November. I just wanted to check with officers because that more than likely wouldn't show up on our EMB as such. But I'm not saying it's on. I've just got it as a placeholder. But there might be a significant clash there. If that date can perhaps be confirmed, the mayor might know something about that. Oh, the meeting the audit and risk meeting on Thursday, the 21st of November. I've got to save the date here for localism showcase that lasts all day, which would clash with this audit and risk, and that would be something that councillors would more than likely be inclined to be wanting to attend. So it's just getting confirmed from Dem Services whether that's actually going ahead or not. It might not be, but I thought just flag it now so that we can front foot that rather than it catch us out closer to the date.
I note the
Okay.
calendar appointment says that is limited to 4 people per council going to, so it may not affect this committee.
It stands until it's changed, Martin, but somebody will look at the point you've raised, and as I said, if any change is necessary, it will be proposed, all right? Okay. Where's the minutes? The unconfirmed minutes. The minutes of the Risk and Assurance Committee meeting of the 23rd of May 2024 be accepted as a true and correct record. I will move from the chair. Seconded by anybody? What about you, David?
Yeah, okay.
Seconded by David. All right. I'll put the motion. All those in favour will say aye. Against? It is carried. Okay, we now move into the public excluded part of the meeting. Where do I move it? Where is the wording?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Move to page 140. Oh no, that's confirmed in the minutes.
Sorry, I'm just looking for the correct wording so that we do correctly move into.
There it is.
Thank you very much. Oh, here we are.
Quite full.
Right. I move that pursuant to section 48 of local, it was 1987, the public now be excluded from the meeting for the reasons given below while the following matters are considered, all right? So that's all I need to say. I will move from the chair, seconded by Lawrence. Thank you very much. All those in favour will say aye, continue, carried. We're now in committee, right? We are now in public excluded. Sarah. Right, of course.